Tenants of a San Francisco apartment building were protesting outside of a landlord's house because he wouldn't stop their eviction and take a $3 million loss. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of San Francisco, right? And obviously, San Francisco, far left leaning, very progressive, very anti-landlord, very pro-tenant. And what they're doing here is they have these tenants there, right? And they're getting evicted from their apartment building because a landlord bought this property and is getting out of the landlord business. So, or I don't know if they're getting out of the business or if they're just completely remodeling the property. But for whatever reason, this is one of the few exceptions that they're able to get these tenants out of the property so that they can be removed from these rent-controlled buildings, right? And so these tenants are upset about it, okay? They don't want to lose their rent-controlled apartments, and they think it's not fair. They think it's just a greedy landlord who's taking advantage of the system. But this landlord is actually working within the system, within the rules that the system set up in order to make a profit. And the tenants, they want the landlord to essentially lose money, so that they can stay there indefinitely, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, who would expect anyone to take millions of dollars in losses for these tenants just out of the kindness of your heart? That's not the way anybody does business. And, it doesn't really make sense. And I'm going to explain exactly why, because, this article is kind of a more, pro-tenant, anti-landlord article. But I like to rip up these sort of opinion pieces because, it give a perspective from a landlord, from a business owner, from somebody who actually knows what's going on and understands what's at stake. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think, okay? What do you think of a place like California or any place with rent control who throws these exceptions in there, right? What do you think of landlords who actually use those exceptions to get rid of their tenants? I mean, obviously, I think it's a good idea. A lot of people, they're against this sort of thing. They're like, well, this isn't right. It isn't right that landlords are using these workarounds to get rid of rent-controlled units. Well, the problem is, right, that landlords wouldn't have to use those workarounds in a normal marketplace, in a normal situation. But this is a government-controlled, government-regulated price controls, okay? And when you create situations like that, then the only thing that business owners or anyone is left to do is, push into the black market or look for the little loopholes or, do whatever it takes in order to get by and survive. And, so they create these problems, okay? They created this situation where the housing stock was going to decrease even further by putting these rent controls into place, because there's no profit for a landlord to have this rent-controlled property and just keep the rents low forever. There's no profit in it. So why would anyone ever want to buy that property unless they had some sort of opportunity to bring the rents back up to regular rate or to make a large profit, okay? So this article is coming from 48hills.org, and it says, tenants go to landlord's house and ask them to call off Ellis Act eviction. Yeah, and this is a story, that I really don't like the fact that people are protesting outside of this landlord's house. And, part of it is people, they deserve privacy. They deserve to be treated with respect. And going to this person's house, where their family, their children, etc. live, that's out of line. And that's not going to help your cause, in my opinion. In fact, out of bitterness, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. You think you can come here and intimidate me? No, that's not going to happen. So, I don't know. Maybe this landlord is intimidated by it. I doubt it. I mean, the truth of the matter is this person probably owns quite a bit of real estate, and this is probably something they do often. And, these protesters and people trying to come down and garner sympathy, they don't understand what's really going on in these businesses, okay? They think that, this is some kind of perfect world where someone else is going to pay for their housing for the rest of their lives. And that's what they want, at least, okay? But let's get into the article and see what it says. Housing organizers from San Francisco and San Jose and residents of a rent-controlled 12-unit apartment building on 3661 19th Street facing eviction protested outside the San Jose home of Pierre and Tracy Malik, two co-owners of the building, who have attempted to evict all of the building's residents twice under the Ellis Act since purchasing it in 2018 for $6.5 million. Demonstrators implored the building's owner to sell the building to a nonprofit organization partnered with the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development through the Small Sites Program, which offers landlords up to $300,000 per unit for eligible buildings and is praised by affordable housing advocates as a way to keep tenants in their buildings. Okay, so let's dive into those first two paragraphs of this article because this is important. And the first thing you need to realize is, okay, the two co-owners of the building, right? They're protesting outside of these people's house, right? And it says right here in the first paragraph that they purchased the building in 2018 for $6.5 million, okay? So then what they want to do, what the tenants want is they want a nonprofit to purchase the property so that they can keep the rents artificially low, basically to make it so it's affordable housing forever, okay? Take it off of the private market. This actually is a bad thing because, there won't be any turnover within the building. There's no profit in this building, so this building could easily become dilapidated. It could become out of shape, and the rents will not cover the cost of maintaining this building in the long run. So a nonprofit obviously wouldn't be able to keep this building up as well as a private property owner would. And this is pretty obvious when you look at all the public housing authorities and what happens to them when they take away the profit incentive, okay? Those buildings become dilapidated quickly, okay? But the second paragraph, it mentions that what this program that the city has set up to preserve the affordable housing will pay up to $300,000 per unit. But let's add it up here. They said this was the 12-unit apartment building. They would pay up to $300,000. Let's say they pay the max, $300,000 per unit. Well, that means that in a 12-unit building, they're only going to pay $3.6 million, okay? And $3.6 million is $3 million less than these people paid for this property 4 years ago. Not to mention the fact that there's been appreciation since then. This thing is probably worth at least $1 million more than what they paid for it in 2018. So they're telling these people to take $3-4+ million loss on this just so they could stay in their units and pay cheap rent. See what I mean when I say, I made a whole video about this. Tenants expect landlords to basically lose money so that they can stay in cheap apartments. You don't have a right to a cheap apartment. You do not have a right to it. And unfortunately, the Bay Area is extremely expensive. But here's the thing. If you go further out and be wherever you can afford, that's all that you're ever going to be able to get, okay? If you're saying, well, I can only afford $1,000 a month, well, you don't have a right to live within the most popular district inside San Francisco where everybody wants to live. Who told you had that right? That's insane, okay? I mean, by that logic, I have a right to a 12,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills, okay? By the same idiotic logic. Oh, and I only have to pay $1,000 a month. Why? Because I think so. I think the owner of that 12,000 square foot mansion should have to take a loss so that I can live there for cheap. You see how stupid that argument is, okay? You could stretch that argument in any way you want, where all of us are living in mansions and then somebody else has to pay for it, okay? But here we have these people in this apartment building demanding that these owners take a $3 million loss, $3 million plus dollar loss, and they have no concept of, the fact that this just isn't going to work. Paul Mooney, an 18-year resident of the 19th Street building and a longtime LGBTQ activist, said selling the building would be the most moral way to make money, as it allows tenants to stay in their homes. Selling it to a nonprofit through the Small Sites Program lets us all stay in our homes, and that's the right thing to do. We hope to appeal to the goodness in their hearts, Mooney said. We don't need more luxury housing in San Francisco. We need more affordable housing. Yeah, so he's like, well, the most moral thing to do is to let me stay here and you lose money. That's idiotic, dude. Okay, you have to understand the argument right there. Yes, sell it to these people for a huge loss. And here's the other thing. Okay, if you think that these people who bought this property are the only people who are involved in it, you're just wrong. Okay, for a property that's like $6.5 million, it's likely that, yeah, these people might be the principals, but there's probably other investors. They probably have a loan from a bank, and these, the bank, the other investors, etc., demand that there be a return on their investment, okay? And just simply put, selling it to this nonprofit is not going to happen. If these people can't pay the bank loan back because they took such a huge loss, if these people can't pay their investors back because they took such a huge loss, they are ruined, okay? And you don't even consider that fact. I mean, what do you think? That this is just somebody who just had a bunch of money in a piggy bank and went down and bought this building and is like, yeah, I'm going to turn my $6.5 million into $10 million. No, you are an idiot, okay? And as in terms of moral, the most moral thing to do is simply put, do not steal from this landlord, right? Because when you are taking something from the landlord that he owns for less than what it costs him to pay for it, you're stealing from that landlord, okay? You're stealing away that money. And this landlord is able to take the losses for now, okay? They're able to take these losses for now because they realize in the future they will be able to make that money back that they're losing by you living in their rent-controlled apartment. But if you continue this on for who knows how long until you die, you want to stay down there, well, he's going to take a huge loss. They're all going to take a huge loss, and it's just not right to demand someone else to take a loss so that you could have subsidized housing. It is not the job of a private landlord to be a affordable housing provider or a homeless shelter for people like you. Okay, so I'm not going to even finish the rest of this article. This really goes into the mindset of tenants, where they think that they are entitled to live in the hottest, coolest part of town in nice housing that's fully updated and then pay rock bottom prices, okay, never be evicted, and they don't expect anyone to ever want to make a profit off of anything. You want socialism, but here's the reality of socialism, okay? If you want to pay rock bottom prices and never get evicted or any of that, you're going to be living in an area you don't want to live in. You're going to be living probably out in the middle of nowhere, far away from the cool entertainment and the district and area where you want to live. You're going to be living in housing that is obsolete. It's so dated that it's barely useful. It's falling apart, dilapidated, because they can't afford to keep it up. There's no profit incentive for anyone to keep it up. And you're going to have a horrible experience, okay? Look at all of the public housing projects and look how awful they were and how they just became slums. That's exactly what you would be living in if you want to have a socialist system. Now, if you want a capitalist system, you're going to have to face the fact that rents go up. That is what happens, but you get the benefits of, hey, I have a really nice place to live, it's in good shape, and I get to live exactly where I want to live and how I want to live. So, interesting article, but stupid tenants don't understand math.